According to legend, Qing Peak has a sect. The disciples in the sect are all outstandingly beautiful. And in this sect, there is a treasure that represents the essence of the sect. That is me, Tim Chu, the only man in the sect. All female disciples adore me endlessly. Even the distant cousin of the fifth Hokage Tsunade is infatuated with me. My unreliable master also lusts after me. None but me can marry. Just as I was observing the techniques my fellow female disciples were practicing, my unreliable master flicked some dust at me which caused me to fall down. Fortunately, Tim Chu, who is experienced in battles, instantly executed the flat sand goose fall move by leaning backward with his buttocks. He successfully performed a martial arts skill called dog gnawing mud without landing his face on the ground. Then my master stood in front of me at this strange angle and said, "I asked you to clean up the sect's premises. You are peeking again." That's right. This unreliable master then encouraged me. "Just looking won't help. You might as well try one." Just as I was explaining that I was here on guard duty, I didn't expect the always unreliable master to finally become reliable. To lend me a helping hand, she kicked me out with one foot. "Thanks, master." And so I found myself in a graceful parabola, falling into the sisters' bathing pool. The elder sister shouted, "Tim Chu, you're peeking again. This is the 19,870th time. Will you ever stop?" Tim Chu peeked out and asked, "Sister, do you need a scrub? How about adding an eye massage?" The sisters quickly wrap themselves in bathrobes. They shout, "I will hit you." Tim Chu is shocked. "Sister, spare me. Your axe is like a treasure sword. Your nunchaku are fatal weapons. And what does your barehanded egg breaking mean? Hey!" Good thing I have been through year after year, day after day. The world is dangerous. I've mastered an escape technique. I run fast and dodge all kinds of hidden weapons thrown by my senior sisters, but couldn't guard against everything. I was hit by the most insidious weapon of my senior sisters, but this did not stop my fleeing steps. Like this, they chase me. I am a reserved person. How could they catch me so easily? Like this, after an hour, my senior sisters could no longer chase me. "Tim Chu, if you are actually as good as you say, don't run," said Tim Chu without changing his expression. Indeed, he maintained a straight face and said, "If you are actually as good as you say, then don't chase after me." At this moment, the master dropped from the sky, finally stopping this melodramatic marathon of she chasing me running, and told Tim Chu that he had passed the test. "You can go down the mountain for training now. You can survive for an hour under the pursuit of your senior sisters, and come out unscathed. You have successfully passed the graduation test. Congratulations, you can go down the mountain now," Tim Chu complained. "Are you sure you're not tricking me into going down the mountain, so I won't see my senior sister showering?" Then, a sudden thought flashed through his mind. There must be a lot of beauties at the foot of the mountain. Finally, I can go and appreciate the beauties. Or, it's time to experience the diversity of beauty. Later, the master threw a bundle to Tim Chu. The train ticket, phone, and his mother's jade pendant were all inside. The master told Tim Chu to take good care of the jade pendant. Tim Chu glanced at it, suddenly feeling a trace of reluctance. He hurriedly clasped his hands in salute. "Master and senior sisters, I'm leaving. Take care of yourselves. Remember to wear warm clothes. Only wear less when I come back." They watched me leaving. The senior sisters were crying inconsolably. "Master, you simply let Tim Chu leave the mountain like this?" Even the young master lowly had a face full of reluctance. "I've been protecting him for 22 years. Now it's time for him to enter the world." As Tim Chu walked out of the station, tears streamed down his face. "It's great. Finally descending the mountain. The beauty's at the foot of the mountain. The young master is coming." In the crowded crowd, a pair of hands reached out from behind Tim Chu. Instantly touched a girl's buttocks. The woman felt a pair of salty hands and turned around abruptly. "Dirty punk," she said. Only Tim Chu was seen standing straight behind the girl. Ching Peak has a sect without a name. The disciples in this sect are all stunning women. And in this sect, there is a treasured object. It is me, Tim Chu, the only man in this sect. Both senior sister and master are coveting me. But never did I expect it. In order to prevent me from continuing to peep at senior sister's bathing. No, it's to let me go down the mountain for training. I was fooled by an unreliable master to go down the mountain. Just walked out of the high-speed rail station, Tim Chu. A man behind stretched out his dirty hand and touched the girl in front. The girl turned around, and the situation was very awkward for a while. It may be because she saw my handsome face. The girl didn't say a word, raised my hand, and was about to give me a big slap. Tim Chu recalled when he was 3 years old, and easily shouted, "Dirty punk!" The master said not to accept gifts from strangers. Dodged away with a single move. The girl missed the target. Tim Chu dropped the bag and raised his hands. "It wasn't me." The person next to me with wandering hands insulted. "If it wasn't you, then who was it? Hurry up and admit it. Don't waste everyone's time." Tim Chu looked coldly at the person with wandering hands. He grabbed him. The man was stunned. "What are you doing? I'm telling you, this is a society ruled by law," Tim Chu said with a smile. "I just wanted to tell you that when you were touching this girl just now, your phone was stolen." The man immediately felt his pocket. "Impossible. My phone is clearly in my pocket." Immediately realized it was not good. The plan was revealed. The girl clenched her fists in anger. "That's what you get from touching me." Tim Chu coldly watched and silently walked away. A piece of advertising paper floated out from the crowd. It was caught by Tim Chu. This world is a bit dangerous. Tim Chu reached into his pocket, pulled out a sense of loneliness, turned around, and saw the CEO of Han Group calling for bodyguards on the big screen. Seems very promising. Meanwhile, the president of Han Group and a pair of twin bodyguards are holding tablets, watching the live broadcast of the kidnappers. They are demanding Han to prepare 10 billion. Otherwise, they will kill his precious daughter. Han exclaimed that he still doesn't have that much cash. 3 days is not enough time. The conversation is not over yet. The ruthless kidnappers hung up the line. Han was very angry. This is simply outrageous. The baby daughter Lily Han's twin bodyguard says, "I'm sorry, President. It's all our fault. I will rescue the young lady now." But was stopped by Han. He then called Secretary Gu. Secretary Gu hurried in. Han rubbed his temples and asked, "You instruct the finance department to allocate funds. I want to see 1 billion in liquid assets in my account tomorrow night." Secretary Gu advised the president that 1 billion is too much. If not, just call the police. Han, in extreme anger, slammed the table in opposition. Secretary Gu, not daring to argue, agreed. Shortly after, Han stood up and called the twin bodyguards. "Go and see the bodyguards you recruited. Check if there are any capable ones." At this time, Tim Chu was taken to the first-floor bodyguard interview meeting room. There were many applicants. All of them appeared to be highly skilled. Tim Chu couldn't help but become interested. He quickly stepped forward to greet them. But he was considered a weak one by everyone and received collective disdainful looks. Tim Chu sat down. The people outside of the mountain didn't seem very friendly. Soon after, Han and his group arrived at the meeting room. At first glance, the room was filled with elderly, weak, sick, and disabled people. It's another group of miscellaneous people. Are we really expecting those bandits to take money and release the hostages? Then Han spoke up. All of you are here to apply for the position of bodyguards. Do any of you have any special talents? After the speech, everyone started showcasing their unique skills. Some were smashing objects with their bare hands, while others were demonstrating a crane-style martial art move. There were also those who showed off their hacking skills. There were people who role-played as Kudo Shinichi, who was living a decent life. And there he is him, he is the one. Our friend, Neza. To demonstrate the chaos at sea. Han is surprised. Okay, we don't hire minors here. Regrettably pointed to Tim Chu. Hurry up. Han thought to himself to finish quickly. I need to find someone who can save my daughter. Upon hearing that, Tim Chu immediately stood up. Ah, that's great. It's finally my turn to perform. Qing Peak has a sect without a name. The disciples of the sect are all stunning women. And in this sect, there is a treasured item that helps maintain the sect's authority. That would be Tim Chu. All senior sisters and masters covet him greatly. Finally, he was informed by the master about the experiences his fellow student had gained after coming down the mountain. In order to survive at the foot of the mountain, he came to the Han group to apply for the position of a bodyguard, among many talented individuals. After the applicants finished showcasing their talents, Tim Chu couldn't wait to pick up the pen on the table. If I break something, I don't have to pay for it, right? Han broke into a cold sweat. Just boasting. No need to compensate. Don't waste time. That's good then. Immediately, Tim Chu turned around and threw the pen out. It was powerful. It flew out with a swoosh and shot into the wall with a bang. Han was greatly shocked. Watching the extremely powerful strike pressed against his own old face. A regular pen actually pierced into the wall. A pair of twin bodyguard girls instantly protected Han. What are you doing? Tim Chu felt helpless for a moment. Didn't you say you were going to demonstrate your skillful technique? Isn't this technique impressive? Han's face darkened. If you only have this little ability, you are not worthy of being a bodyguard for the Han group. Tim Chu is greatly affected. This is nothing. It turns out, I am not even qualified to be an apprentice. The master just thinks I'm a thug. Did she drive me down the mountain because he found me annoying? But I don't have any money to return to the mountain. Then he looked at the two beautiful female bodyguards. Why don't you give it a try? The girl turned her head and looked at Han. Han nodded in agreement. The twin bodyguards clasped their fists and said, Please. Then they drew their short knives and stood ready in formation. Tim Chu's eyes lit up with excitement. This shirt is huge, rather than, this chest is really white. Sorry in advance. Stop with the nonsense. Sister Mei looks on coldly. She immediately rushed forward with a short knife in her hand. Tim Chu's body moved slightly, with a smile on his face. He reached out and blocked the attack. With a casual wave of his hand, he snatched the dagger from Mei Wei's hand with a loud snap. Lucy Wei, the younger sister, looked on in surprise. Tim Chu's movements were continuous, without any hesitation. He crouched down and swung a short knife in his hand. Sister Mei Wei's clothes were instantly slashed open. Watching the clothes burst open, Tim Chu just realized, it's all messed up. He forgot that this is not a practice session with senior sisters. And Sister Mei Wei instantly explained in shame and anger. Sister Lucy Wei attacked furiously with a blade. I'll make you pay. Tim Chu grabbed Lucy Wei's hand. Stay calm. It was just an accident. A hand was grabbed by Tim Chu. Lucy Wei, whose other hand was injured, glared tearfully with anger in her eyes and said, Then you should let go quickly. He looked at Lucy Wei with a pitiful expression and instantly threw away the dagger. He let go. Lucy Wei, who had broken free, hurried to help her sister whose clothes were of poor quality. Slowly walk up to Han. "Co, I let you down," Han whispered softly. "It's okay." Tim Chu looked at it with starry eyes full of expectation. "Boss, have I passed the level now?" Unexpectedly, Han pointed angrily at the door. "Please leave." Tim Chu looked shocked, full of disbelief. As the treasurer of the sect, the only man, Tim Chu descended the mountain. To solve the problem of livelihood, he applied to be a bodyguard. Unexpectedly, he accidentally used excessive force, which provoked Han's discontent. Han pointed to the door and sternly said, "Please leave." Tim Chu was greatly surprised by this situation. Han continued, "Han Group does not welcome someone like you." Tim Chu left with a dejected look on his face, holding a bag. "It's all because my hands were too skillful." Han watched Tim Chu's departing figure and instructed the twin bodyguards, "You go and make arrangements." Afterward, Han looked contemplative and gazed at the departing Tim Chu with a pensive expression. Tim Chu covered his stomach, feeling like crying, but no tears came. "Sigh, I'm so hungry. It's tough these days to find a job. Why is it so difficult?" Tim Chu, looking dejected, noticed someone in front of him and was momentarily stunned. He turned his head to look. Han and two twin bodyguards appeared in front of him. Han spoke lightly. "I came specifically to find you. Do you know why I need bodyguards? Because someone is after my life. And this person is right beside me." Tim Chu was startled. "Why are you telling me this?" Then Han handed over a golden card. "As long as you can protect the 1 million here, it's all yours." Tim Chu's eyes sparkled. "How can I possibly accept this?" But his body still honestly reached out to take the card. At this moment, the bodyguard's twin sister, Mei Wei, had a dark expression on her face. Suddenly, a cold light flashed in her eyes. She thrust the knife towards Han. Tim Chu acted quickly with sharp eyes. He swiftly stepped forward and stood in front of Han. He grabbed Mei Wei's wrist. He exerted force with his hand. Mei Wei winced in pain, and the short knife slipped from her hand. Tim Chu reached out and with a snap grabbed the short knife. With a flash, holding a short knife in his hand against Mei Wei's neck, Mei Wei was shocked. "No!" Just then, Han suddenly shouted for Tim Chu to stop. Tim Chu turned his head and saw Han pulling back his collar to reveal the protective gear on his neck. "This is just a test. You should let him go first." Upon hearing this, Tim Chu immediately leaned back. Put away the short knife. "Boss Han, this test is quite dangerous, isn't it?" Mei Wei, who was held against, suddenly felt weightless. Her body leaned forward and bumped into Tim Chu. Tim Chu reached out busily to help. "It's so big." "No, it's soft." No, it's be careful." Mei Wei was ashamed and angry for a while. Tim Chu felt awkward after letting go. Looked at the angry Mei Wei. Han was also embarrassed. Then he said, "Please don't take it the wrong way. After all, this matter concerns the safety of my daughter, Lily Han. I must act cautiously." Tim Chu sighed and thought to himself, "I have taken advantage of this. What else can I say?" he asked anxiously. "What happened to your daughter?" Han felt a wave of worry. "This morning I received a call from the kidnappers. Only then did I know she had been kidnapped. Those kidnappers are well informed about the group's situation, so I suspect there is a mole in the organization." He then pulled out a photo of his daughter. "If I report this to the police, they will tear up the ticket. I have no choice but to seek help in the name of hiring bodyguards to save her." Tim Chu looked at the photo of Lily Han on the tablet. This proficient binding technique. This familiar composition. This familiar artistic style. The bandit must like BDSM. Tim Chu watched the skilled way the bandits tied up their captives. Tim Chu was filled with righteous anger. The bandits' heinous actions were beyond belief. As an upright person like Tim Chu, he couldn't bear to witness such atrocities. Later, he held the tablet with a look of righteousness on his face, taking deep breaths. Due to the overwhelming anger, a nosebleed that was about to erupt. The twin bodyguards glanced at Tim Chu's gloomy appearance and cursed, "Dirty punk." Han said, "Then I'll trouble you to come back to the villa with me." The group got into the car and headed to the villa. Han said, "Just in case, I have also invited many experts. They are all in my villa. As long as you all act together, I can also be assured." The moment he opened the door, Tim Chu patted Han's shoulder. Boss Han may not have a chance to act together. Han looked over in shock. He saw blood stains all over the floor and many experts lying on the ground. A fat man and two men standing next to the body sneered. "Han, you finally came back. We brothers have been waiting for you for a long time." Then with a bang, the door was locked. Han was shocked and said, "Iron Blood Overlord, Double Death Knives, what do you mean by this? I hired you to save people." The fat man laughed and said, "Your den has been raided. You still want to save people. If it weren't for us being sensible, we would be like these people now, turning into corpses. Only by crippling you can we have a way out. Blame yourself for provoking those ruthless people." Tim Chu pointed to the opposite side and asked, "Boss Han isn't testing us this time, right?" Mei Wei angrily replied, "Testing my ass. These three people together can easily take down all the experts in the high city." Han's tendons bulged lightly as he angrily said, "It's not a test. If you can kill them, I will pay you 1 million for each." One of them flexed his muscles and roared without stopping. The other two pulled out short knives, with a playful look on their faces. Three people immediately started charging towards Tim Chu and the others. "Kid, I advise you not to get involved in this mess. You are not our opponent. Stop now, and we will let you go." Tim Chu sneered while clenching his fist. "Oh really? I'm not your opponent," he said, then threw a punch. With a bang, the punch landed on the chubby guy's face. "Just the likes of you combined together," he said. "Can't even defeat half a senior sister on the mountain." The chubby guy's face was instantly shattered by a punch. A sting of pain. "How could you possibly break through my blood shield and find my fatal point?" Tim Chu felt disdain in his heart. How dare he call himself the Iron Blood Overlord with just this level of strength? Then can I also dominate the whole country? Immediately, he sent the fat man flying with one strike. The two of them were shocked when dealing with Mei Wei. Suddenly, the handsome face of the iron-blooded tyrant appeared in front of them, rotating and getting closer to themselves. Then with a bang, they collided. The three fell to the ground and couldn't get up. Tim Chu was thrilled, shouting, "Oh yeah, got 3 million! Han, are you sure you're not fooling me? It's really easy to make money under mountain." Han looked nervous. "I didn't expect the little brother to be so capable. Are you willing to continue to take on the task of rescuing my daughter? If you agree, I will pay you 100 million as a reward." At this moment, the man who just fell to the ground was holding a short blade in his hand. He suddenly stabbed towards Han. Tim Chu quickly turned around and threw a punch. He kicked the person, sending them flying. He exclaimed excitedly, "Okay. Can you change the 100 million into $1 bills for me? It feels like there are 100 times more money now." 3 days later. At Han Group, Han is inquiring about the news of the reinforcements he invited. He breathed a sigh of relief after learning that everything had been arranged properly. "That's good." The phone rang immediately. Han answered it hurriedly. "Where is my daughter?" the voice on the phone asked. Han's voice sounded full of vigor. It seemed that those useless people really couldn't hurt Han. Han broke out in a cold sweat. Let's talk. I have already prepared the ransom. Where is my daughter? The voice on the other end of the phone laughed. 1 billion ransom. Transport it to the toll booth with a truck. Naturally, someone will bring your daughter back. Then he hung up the phone. Han heard his daughter sobbing on the other end of the phone. He became furious. Han threw the cell phone to the ground. Asked Secretary Gu to load the ransom into the car. Shortly after, inside the Han Group warehouse, Secretary Gu directed the workers to pack the boxes. After the packing was finished, Secretary Gu saw the loading was complete. They went to inspect the positioning device. Then, in a strange posture, they checked the locator mounted under the box. He quietly broke the locator. Then he turned around and smiled, saying, I've checked everything. It was intact, except for the driver. Let's all go home. He then turned around and smiled, saying, I will go back now to report to Han. Before long, Secretary Gu arrived at Han's office. Han has already packed the 1 billion ransom. The car has now driven out of the warehouse. Han looked exhausted and said, Let's go back and wait for the message. Secretary Gu agreed and took out a locator. Oops, the locator is malfunctioning. He handed over the display screen and then pulled out a dagger from below. He fiercely stabbed towards Han. The knife thrust at Han's chest. Mei Wei exclaimed, Are you insane? The tip of the knife just pierced into Han's chest. An iron chain suddenly broke through the door with a loud crash. It entangled the dagger. Then the iron chain retracted, pulling the dagger away and causing it to slip out of hand. Shortly after, the owner of the iron chain broke in through the door. The young girl had a fiery temper. She was Lisa Xiao, the third senior sister of Tim Chu. Secretary Gu quickly stepped back. He glared at Han and cursed. Old thing! You set me up! Han sneered in response. If I didn't take the risk myself, would you have been exposed so easily? I suspected long ago that there was a spy within the group. Do you think I won't be prepared? Secretary Gu dodged the iron chain skillfully. Han is really clever. Immediately, Lisa Xiao swung the iron chain again towards Secretary Gu. Today, you can't escape. Secretary Gu hurriedly dodged. Dark expression on Gu's face. The wall was pierced through. Secretary Gu jumped down and fled. Lisa Xiao followed in pursuit. The twin bodyguards helped Han to the wall. This is the 37th floor. Are bodyguards these days always this intense? On the other side, a group of kidnappers has already driven out the truck containing the ransom. Hurry and move it. Don't delay the boss's matters. 2 kidnappers are carrying a box hiding Tim Chu. This box is quite heavy. There should be the most money inside. Another kidnapper is threatening Lily Han with a dagger. We have got the money. This woman is useless now. Do you guys want to have some fun? The 2 men immediately felt overjoyed and threw the box containing Tim Chu to the ground. What are you standing there for? Go get the clothes. This girl is amazing. I've been craving her for days. Then he ran towards Lily Han. The other kidnapper also quickly cut open Lily Han's clothes. The scene was magnificent for a moment. Hovering on the edge of YouTube approval, Lily Han sobbed and cried. 2 kidnappers excitedly approached Lily Han. Tim Chu suddenly jumped out of the box, surprising everyone. Are you surprised? Are you amazed? As the treasurer of the sect, the only man Tim Chu. After going down the mountain, he became the bodyguard of the chairman of Han Group. His small goal is to earn $1 billion by saving Lily Han. Tim Chu hid in the box like this. He gave the kidnappers a big surprise. The kidnappers turned around. Who's there? Tim Chu stepped out of the box. The man who was about to become a billionaire. The kidnapper chuckled. You alone think you can save someone from our brother's hands. How many drinks you had? Han sent a weakling like you to rescue his daughter. I'm afraid this daughter was adopted, right? Lily Han hurriedly shouted to Tim Chu. These people are all martial arts experts. They are very powerful. You quickly go. Don't sacrifice your life in vain. The kidnapper brandished a knife at Lily Han. Shut up. I'll teach you a lesson first. Lily Han couldn't avoid it, and closed her eyes, as if awaiting her fate. But then a wail came from the kidnapper. My hand! Only to see Tim Chu grabbing the kidnapper's wrist. Miss Han, it's okay. Don't be afraid. Subsequently, kidnapper number 1's arm deformed and retreated to the side. Tim Chu reached out to help Lily Han. I am here. Don't be afraid. Lily Han looked at Tim Chu gratefully. Someone then launched a surprise attack. Lily Han shouted, Be careful! Tim Chu remained calm, casually grabbing one of the captors and spinning him around. He sent all the captors flying. The magic power of love was swirling around. Thinking of you makes my heart bloom with joy. Night and day. The captor number 2, who was swirling around with the magic power of love, happily foamed at the mouth. Tim Chu smiled. Ambushing is not a good habit. He rushed to help untie Lily Han. I'm now untying Miss Han. If you come rushing over, it won't be my fault if someone dies. Lily Han looked surprised. So you are quite skilled indeed. As the most incompetent player in the sect, Tim Chu said awkwardly, It's just SOSO. He's only ranked 99th on our mountain. Lily Han was stunned. Is he that good? But then the bandit cursed and picked up the machine gun. Are you still that good? Can you outdo a gun? Tim Chu turned around to look. If you can't win, you gotta play dirty? Then with a flicker, he picked up Lily Han. With a swoosh, he dodged the bullets with blue flames, hiding in the corner. The leader of the kidnappers gestured for the others to surround them. The man is to be killed. The woman can stay alive. A group of kidnappers surrounded them. Kid, put down Lily Han now. I can spare your life, said one of them. Lily Han worried. They have the numbers and firearms. Don't worry about me, Tim Chu said. I've been entrusted with this task. If I leave you, it'll be the end of my career. But I'll need your cooperation next. Lily Han was puzzled. What kind of cooperation? I will behave, I promise. Then Lily was lifted by Tim Chu. Clasp tightly, no I meant. Hold on tight, and don't let go. I'll take you home. Tim Chu's eyes are full of little hearts. With a face full of righteous determination, he thought to himself, Wow, these legs are really strong. He happily dashed out from the corner, giving the kidnapper a scare. Then he rushed over suddenly, scaring Lily Han. Don't be impulsive. Our bodies can't withstand bullets. Tim Chu then appeared in front of the kidnapper. He covered the muzzle with his hand. He broke the kidnapper's wrist, and then took the gun from him. After that, he caught the gun and said, Relax, everything will be fine soon. He immediately pulled the trigger and shot at the kidnappers. The kidnappers dared not approach. The gang leader immediately gave orders. Don't be a pussy, charge. The kidnappers immediately jumped down to attack. Tim Chu looked down at Lily Han. He was waiting for them to come down. Don't panic, the show is about to begin. Next, I will perform a magic trick for you. Lily Han broke into a cold sweat. Stay calm. Let's run fast. Tim Chu raised the pistol. Don't panic. The show is about to begin. Then he decisively pulled the trigger. A shot was fired, hitting the explosives behind the kidnapper. There was a loud explosion as the explosives ignited. Tim Chu looked smug as he hugged Lily Han and flew out. The house exploded into ashes in an instant. Tim Chu looked at the woman in his arm and said, How was it? Did I lie? Lily Han looked up at Timothy with admiration. Do you know how scared I was? But thank you. But then Tim Chu's expression froze. A slightly disheveled figure suddenly flashed out from the bushes. It was Han's secretary. The two of them were shocked as their eyes met. Tim Chu slowly walked over to Lily Han. Secretary Gu slowly pulled out a dagger from behind. This is the treasure of the Qing Peak sect. The only man in the whole sect. For a reward of 1 billion. Go alone to rescue the young lady of the Han group. Just as he succeeded in carrying the beauty out, he ran into Secretary Gu, who came out of Han group with a smile on his face. You are also invited by Mr. Han to help rescue Lily, he asked. But in his heart, he thought, isn't this guy already kicked out of the company? Tim Chu held Lily Han with great satisfaction. Unfortunately, you are late. I haven't finished talking yet, Lily Han said with a happy smile. Secretary Gu, why are you here? Where's my dad? Is he also here? After finishing speaking, she jumped down from Tim Chu's arms. Tim Chu looked reluctant. It seems like you know him. And at this moment, Secretary Gu held the dagger hidden behind his back. Lily Han looked at Tim Chu. Yes, she is my dad's secretary. Secretary Gu. Tim Chu looked at Secretary Gu and asked, Secretary? Is she the kind of secretary I'm thinking of? Secretary Gu took a deep breath. Slowly calmed down. The hand behind him tightened around the dagger. Suddenly Han's words flashed through Tim Chu's mind. There is a mole in the organization. At this moment, Secretary Gu walked slowly towards the two of them. Yes, your father is nearby. Let me come and pick you up first. I didn't expect there to be an ambush outside. Lily immediately stepped forward upon hearing this. Thank you, Secretary Gu. You are very badly injured. Let me support you. But he was stopped by Tim Chu. You have been kidnapped for so many days. How can you support her? Then he rubbed his hands together with a lecherous smile on his face. I'll do it. But in his heart, he was considering that at a glance, he could not figure out the true identity of this person. He must not let her get close. He should first stabilize her. Then a slap landed on Secretary Gu's butt. A pretentious appearance of righteousness. Beauty, you must be the person arranged by Boss Han to meet me. Indeed, as beautiful as mentioned by Boss Han. Secretary Gu showed an expression of charming displeasure on her face. She thought to herself, it seems like he is a talented but brainless rogue. The backup he mentioned must be someone else. I cannot afford to complicate things at this moment. Seduce him first. Take advantage of his unguarded moment. Then control Lily Han. Lucky day for this punk. Then she charmingly snuggled up to Tim Chu. Little brother, you have such a sweet mouth. You're making me feel embarrassed. Tim Chu looked puzzled for a moment, his face slightly red, and he looked at Secretary Gu. Secretary Gu. That chest is really beautiful. Is this the adult world? Seeing the intertwined dog-like couple, Lily Han's legs went soft with a sudden smack. Sitting on the ground, so suddenly. Is this content that can pass censorship? Who am I? Where am I? Watching Tim Chu's hands becoming more and more fidgety. Secretary Gu coyly chided. What are you doing in broad daylight? Tim Chu decided to stop well ahead. After all, the important matters were all taken care of. This person also needs to relax. It's all about balancing work and rest. Yet, Secretary Gu gave him a push. What's the hurry for? Didn't you see that Lily couldn't stand steadily? I'll go help her. Yet, he was held back by Tim Chu. He quickly pulled her in front of him. What are you helping her for? Help my little brother. He is your big treasure tonight. The two of them, each with their own ulterior motives, stared at each other for a moment. Secretary Gu said sternly, Don't go too far. Tim Chu looked and laughed, saying, There are even more outrageous things. Do you want to give it a try? Secretary Gu's face turned ugly. Fuming in his heart, he thought, "This arrogant Tim Chu is too despicable. I can hardly bear it." Suddenly, Tim Chu exerted force in his hand. Secretary Gu was caught off guard, and his feet struggled to keep up with his running. Tim Chu took advantage of the situation and dodged Secretary Gu's dagger. Immediately, without hesitation, Tim Chu exerted force with his feet to strike Secretary Gu's chest. But he was blocked by a powerful force. Tim Chu was greatly shocked, whether it was protective true energy or spiritual power. Secretary Gu, who reacted, was furious. "How dare you play tricks on me?" Then he elbowed towards Tim Chu. Tim Chu dodged with a twist of his body. He also retorted, "It takes two to tango. How can you blame it all on me?" Secretary Gu was furious. "You are asking for death," he exclaimed. Immediately, he gathered power in his hand and struck out with countless spiritual powers. The palm wind attacked Tim Chu. In an instant, rocks and stones shattered. Although Tim Chu managed to dodge upon landing, he was still injured. Lily Han hurried over and asked with concern, "What is the situation?" Tim Chu covered the wound. "She is the mole by your father's side." Look at Secretary Gu, with spiritual power fluctuations all around him. He thought, "She is also a cultivator with spiritual power. Your father really misunderstood me." Lily Han helped Tim Chu up and said, "Secretary Gu, why did you betray the Han family?" Secretary Gu said coldly, "I have never been part of the Han family. Stop talking nonsense and go die." With that, Secretary Gu jumped up and charged forward. Tim Chu picked up Lily Han and jumped high to dodge. He spun several times in the air, narrowly avoiding the attack. He felt a bit inadequate. He whispered in Lily Han's ear, "After I put you down later, you run into the warehouse." Lily Han looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Okay, I promise not to hold you back." Secretary Gu launched another attack. "You're still whispering sweet nothings at death's door. Save those words for next life." Immediately, she slapped down with enormous spiritual power. Tim Chu flashed in front of Lily Han, and blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. The blood splashed on the jade pendant, triggering a green light. Secretary Gu looked down from a high place at the two people she had knocked down. Tim Chu, who was about to fall to the ground, threw Lily Han down. He shouted loudly, "Run, run fast!" Secretary Gu's eyes flashed with anger. "Taking advantage of me and ruining my good deeds. Today, I will crush you into mincemeat." As she spoke, she slammed down with her palm. With a loud bang, Tim Chu was sent flying. Injured, he fell to the ground, staring in astonishment at the jade pendant shining on his chest. He was also surprised by the glowing jade pendant. Secretary Gu was equally shocked when he looked over. The jade pendant was spiritual power. Could it be some kind of treasure? The jade pendant on Tim Chu's chest emitted a green light. Accompanied by the flickering green light, numerous skills flooded into Tim Chu's brain. A huge amount of energy poured into Tim Chu's body. X-ray vision, clairvoyance, and other energy streams poured into Tim Chu's body all at once. Tim Chu was in a state of great horror, absorbing the energy. At this moment, Secretary Gu's body is already emitting spiritual power, flying towards here. "No matter what treasures you possess, you all have to die." Tim Chu absorbed the energy, looking over in shock. Her speed has slowed down. Are those green lights her weakness? Next, he suddenly turned his body, rapidly darting towards Secretary Gu. "Now it's my turn to perform." He threw a punch, hitting Secretary Gu's weak spot hard. Secretary Gu was completely unprepared. She spat out a mouthful of blood. "How is this possible? I am a cultivator. How could mere mortals possibly hurt me?" Tim Chu twisted his wrist and sneered. "There's nothing impossible in front of me." Secretary Gu is angry. The spiritual power in his hand suddenly increases drastically. She swiftly directs it towards Tim Chu, wrapping the dagger in spiritual power and diving towards Tim Chu. Tim Chu, who seems to be cheating, quickly dodges. Snatched the dagger. Swung the dagger, forcing Secretary Gu back. As Secretary Gu's figure retreated, she followed up with a flying kick towards Tim Chu's vital point. Tim Chu's eyes flashed with a green light as he swiftly lowered his body and grabbed Secretary Gu's ankle with a snap. Then he made a strange gesture and attacked in a strange direction. He applied force with a snap in his hand. He ruthlessly threw Secretary Gu to the ground. Secretary Gu fell in a very miserable way. Secretary Gu struggled to get up. How did you manage to do that? I'm faster than a bullet. Later she saw the jade pendant emitting a green light on Tim Chu's chest. Could it be that jade pendant? At that moment, Tim Chu stabbed down with a knife. Secretary Gu swiftly stepped back in the twinkling of an eye, narrowly avoiding the strike. She then slowly stood up, her face darkening, with a fierce and restless energy surging through her body. I admit, you have some skills. But that's all for now. Although this move will cost me a lot of spiritual power, it's worth it for the jade pendant and Lily Han. Tim Chu looked puzzled at Secretary Gu. This is a spell. Immediately, he turned his head to look at Lily Han. I'll try to stop her. You find a way to run quickly. He then nervously turned his head to look at Secretary Gu. Come on! Who made me take the commission? One step forward, he rushed towards the transforming Secretary Gu. Secretary Gu sneered with coldness at the corner of his mouth. You are really overestimating yourself. Then she confidently struck a demon-like pose. But at that moment, a figure appeared. I'd say you are the one who's underestimating your opponent. Secretary Gu was greatly shocked. Then a chain attack followed. In an instant, easily pierced through Secretary Gu's chest. She is Tim Chu's third senior sister. Who gave you the courage to bully my junior brother? Tim Chu and Secretary Gu were both surprised. Look in the direction of the attack. Third sister holding an iron chain and chuckling lightly. My people can only be bullied by me. You are not qualified yet. Secretary Gu saw this and exerted force in his hand. In an instant, she crushed the jade token in his hand. I have remembered this humiliation. I will repay it 100-fold in the future. After that, with a bang, smoke billowed up and the figure disappeared. Third sister retrieved the iron chain and coldly said, Transmission token. Consider yourself lucky for running fast. Then she ran towards Tim Chu. Tim Chu exclaimed in surprise. Third sister, how did you come here? Third sister had an anxious expression on her face. If I hadn't come, you would have been beaten to death by this woman. With your meager abilities, what are you showing off for? Tim Chu scratched his head in embarrassment. Didn't I just take on the task? Besides, there is still hope if we give it a try. But then his eyes suddenly stung with pain. He held his head in agony. But when he opened his eyes again, a green light flashed out from his pupils. Then he looked at the third senior sister. This is the breast of the third senior sister. It turns out to be so white and so big. So amazing. Then 2 sprays of nosebleed gushed out happily. Due to excessive blood loss, feeling lightheaded, and falling headfirst. The senior sister rushed forward to help. But Tim Chu accidentally bumped into the senior sister's well-developed chest. He bumped into a pair of delicate and fragrant soft chest. Thanks to proper caching measures, Tim Chu is fine. His senior sister patted Tim Chu's head affectionately, looking concerned. Tim Chu, are you okay?